Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. So today I thought I would just talk a bit about what happened in YCS London and my personal thoughts on everything that went down. Because I was initially planning on going to London, however, I unfortunately was ill and so I couldn't travel up. To be fair, I'd been procrastinating the whole time, like booking my ticket one day later, one day later. So I don't know if I actually would have gone. Um, but I because I was ill, I wasn't really doing anything else, so I decided to watch like the majority of the London. I've seen most of the games, all the feature matches rather, and I also some of my mates went up there, and I've gotten a bit of feedback from them as well. Um, the main thing that's on everyone's minds is Cash Tira. Um, so Cash Tira obviously was had a very it had less presence than anticipated during the Swiss. But then when you actually got up to the top cut, it just more and more cash tira seemed to appear, and there's multiple reasons for that. I mean, I think the main strength at the moment I'm seeing in cash tira is its recursive ability, its ability to keep playing. Like people don't even need to go for that one zone lock most of the time because generally cash tira is like you've got like you top deck unicorn or anything that gets you to unicorn, you just do your full combo again, and the cash tira monsters are just such large board presences as well, and it just puts a lot of pressure on the opponent immediately. And I think that's really especially for a lot of strategies that are coming up, that can be very intimidating. It also has the space to play a large number of hand traps or other tech cards. We're looking at the second place London list here, and you can see they've actually decided to run a cross out package along with like pretty much every conceivable hand trap or tech that could appear in main. So like I'm really to be fair, like stuff like Lance, it's had a smaller presence than initially, but I know a couple of people personally that are also on it, and I can see why. Like, it's very effective. It protects against multiple different pieces of interaction, um, but also just like anything that could come up. For example, like even if no hand traps come up, something like cross outing the talents can be pretty darn good to be honest, and also of course cross out any of your opposing cash tira cards if you don't need that. But yeah, so I think cross out was a very nice choice, and it certainly wasn't very conformative because not many people have gone for this as far as I'm aware. Though of course I had to look at the full breakdown later on. Um, and what I really like about this list, actually, I'm just going on to talking about the list now. I can't lie, but what I really like on the list is this one Garura. And what I don't I'm not personally in the mind of Tom Kleingraber, but I think this is meant to be like Diablosis bait. Because if people see this, they're thinking, oh, Super Poly, get rid of that. Super Poly target's gone. Super Poly isn't in this list. So I don't know how the heck he would summon Garura, so I think this is literally designed to bait out Diablosis, which I find really cool. Um, and of course, there's Goliath for the extra material. And I like and three Arise Heart, which I can see why, because now people are doing the Arise Heart pass. It's like you're going through more Arise Hearts than initially in your combo. So I think I find this very interesting. And in the side we've got like all sorts of things, and there's just like you notice like apart from the two evenly main and some like anti-spell and trap stuff, essentially it mostly consists of hand traps, which I like. I'm my decks at the moment I'm building like are main decking like a bunch of hand traps that have flexibility first or second specifically. And then, of course, in the side, I've got stuff like Omega, amazing hand trap. It has showed up so much during the YCS. Like hardly a feature match went by when we didn't see. I said Omega, Gamma. I'm stupid. Apologies. But yeah, Gamma did such a powerful. But yeah, Gamma had such a powerful presence during all the matches that I was watching that it turned up, and it turned up in a heck of a lot of them. But yeah, so he's decided to go concentrating on hand traps, and that also aids the crossout package, which is sort of similar to my thinking in terms of deck building at the moment. Other things to talk about. So yeah, the Kashtira had such a power was such a powerhouse because of a multitude of reasons. But yeah, I think, like I said, it's primarily their ability to keep playing and the fact there's just such big bodies. Like they immediately contend nearly anything you can put up. It's like you make an Apollosa, and most commonly it'll be a 3-mat Apollosa. Fenrir immediately contests that out the gate. Like you can go into battle, Fenrir swing into Appaloosa. That's your Appaloosa gone. Like that has just been amazing. And actually, another thing is birth. Now we're seeing 3 birth here, and I was an advocate for 3 birth. 3 birth is what you really want to go for if you're expecting any sort of grind game. And like against decks such as Sprite and Runic, because Runic was probably the most seen engine there. Yeah, uh, birth is amazing because it just keeps bringing your stuff back. Oh, your one of your casters got banished off of the runic card. Great, I'll bring it back on the board. But yeah, so I think the birth is also at 3 is very nice. I don't know if this is standard in list because like I said, I haven't gone over everything, but I know that some people weren't playing birth at 3 and some weren't even playing it at 2. But yeah, so I really like that. However, of course, we got to talk about the winning deck, which is Melfi Sprite. We don't actually have a deck list out for that yet. But I really like the Melfi Sprite list. It looks so fun. But yeah, so that is just essentially it just had such a versatile ability to play. I mean, even under Shifter, you could see Samir was still being able to put up at least a board, which I mean, for Sprite, yes, of course, it's not as impressive, but like to be honest, that's still pretty good. I believe it was a combination of Catty and Pinny potentially, um, which making stuff like Herald of the Arclight and other monsters, and also just lending itself to the rank 2 engine. It was very strong, and I think also just very good piloting. But yeah, so I'm really impressed by that list. I mean, the main thing that I've seen coming up with Sprite is that, oh, especially when going second, is that you'll literally you'll break your opponent's board for the most part. Well, hopefully you will if you're the pilot. That's what you're looking for, and you will just sit on Sprite Red and Carrot, and maybe another form of interruption, and that will usually be enough to answer what remains in their hand. It's like essentially whenever I was seeing a match against a Sprite player, if the opponent had like very little resources left, they would just make red, they would just make carrot, and they had like it was like blue and jet on the field, and then they're just past there. Like there was no need to keep extending. And usually that was enough to answer whatever they had left. Of course, against Kashtira, that's not gonna be the answer because, well, they're such big monsters. But like against like a lot of decks, especially like branded, if you have carrot and red in defense position, branded has no normal sums to beat over that. They need to go for the like branded fusion or whatever to get a monster big enough to answer that. So that means they're having to go through their effects. So obviously that answers that. And actually, that brings me on to the thing I want to talk about, which is branded. As a branded player, like I don't know how to feel about the results. I can see why branded didn't do as well. The fact that Ash Blossoms in nearly every player's main deck, it immediately just shuts down the main branded strategy. It just means that it wasn't in a good place. And the fact that the main deck of the format is making a walking macro didn't lend itself to the situation either. That doesn't affect me as much because and I think a lot of branded players need to step back and take a look at this. My deck isn't built optimally, I'll admit, but that's just because I wanted to throw some nice text in there. But branded players need to think about how they can play beyond the branded fusion. That's the key thing. And I think that really it'll be different for each person, but you need to step back and think about it. It's like, do testing. Act as though your opponent has Ash every time, or and what I've personally been doing is active opponent has Ash imperm every time because I've had so many situations where I'm like, okay, I can play through the Ash. They've got the imperm, so you need to start thinking about how to play through that Ash, or if you're not, or just around it. Like obviously you've got decks that the branded Predator Plant list that can negate the Ash, but of course if they have an imperm, well, what are you doing then? But anyway, that's really all I can say for branded. Like it has its obvious weaknesses, and that's the main thing. Like, and also the fact that it doesn't make any spell and trap negates generally, apart from perhaps a dragoon. And so like anything such as evenly lightning storm immediately becomes a massive threat. But yes, that's that on branded. I think one of the cards that made a surprise entry is Kurikara. Now Kurikara is very interesting, and it is not once per turn as we found out in the finals, which was very funny. But yeah, this is really cool. Because obviously, a Kashtira player activates Shangri-La. You just get to Kurikara that straight up. A Right Heart's mandatory effects triggers because the card is banished. Kurikara it. Um, and so that's just insanely powerful against the Kashtira board. Obviously, I've seen a lot of people apparently maining this, from what I could tell from the commentators, and that is really nice tech actually. And I had some of these, but I got rid of them on pre-release prices, which is, I mean, I'm I'm still not one for it just because I'm playing brand at the moment and I don't see it fitting in very nicely to my strategy. But no, I can like especially with the sprite list, I can see this coming up, and it answers Kashtira almost perfectly. Um, and of course, drawing two helps in that final. So God, that hand though was that was just what was needed. So yeah, Kurikara is a really nice thing, and I didn't actually see this until London actually rolled around, which is interesting. Well, we also saw Mathematic make an appearance here, which was interesting, but it didn't do like amazingly. I don't think it made it to top eight. But that was probably just because it isn't. Though yes, Mathematic's really good. It really, if it's going first, it can really answer a lot of decks. And going second, well, if you make update Jammer access code, that's generally a good situation to be in. But the problem with Mathematic, I found getting into the later rounds is Kashtira's getting a larger and larger presence. And what does Kashtira make? It makes a walking macro. What does Kashtira play? It plays Dimension Shifter. These instantly become a huge trouble for Mathematics to get through. And outside of stuff like Omega, Gamma. I keep saying Omega. Omega is the extra card. It's right there. Aside from stuff like Gamma called by usually out of engine things, you're not gonna be able to interact with that. No way in archetype to interact with those cards. Aside from, of course, getting rid of the Arise Heart after comboing, which will cost you resources. So it means that although, yes, Mech might be able to perhaps play through the shifter, their resource game will probably be very scuffed by then. Like Sigma being banished, Circular sends for cost, I believe, which sends that offline. Yeah, it sends for cost, so that it won't be able to activate under a macro, I believe. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. But yeah, no. So Mathemec, obviously, though it's very good against like literally every other strategy, I feel. Kashtira's just if Kashtira gets go first, that becomes an instant issue. And of course, if they draw into the shifter, that becomes an issue. And like over so many games, you're gonna have this happen. It's just like it's sort of inevitable, which I think is why Mathematics started to drop off as we got into later rounds. Though I still think the deck's in a very good position opposed to last format. I guess the final thing to talk about would be the runic and I can spell, don't worry. Is the runic, which did seem to be, especially in Swiss, runics seem to have a very large presence. And I can see why. Like you can choose sort of any engine Naturia for hire, throw it in with Runic, and throw it in with Sprite as well, even, and you've just got yourself a like just a really powerful deck. Like the Runic Fur Hire build was so cool. Draw six, why not? But I think that the Runic Engine is just good. It like your trade if you trade 1 for 1 or even 1 for 2 efficiently, manage your resources well, and keep gartering more from Fountain and if you're playing Fur Hire, Folgo, you're just in such a good position, and it just means that you can win the grind game most of the time. Like against anything other than Cash Tira, like the runic cards banishing as well is so massive because you're just getting rid of stuff that is essentially going to be needed. Like branded, for example, banish all their Fallen of Albazes, and suddenly it becomes a whole lot more difficult. Banishing even one, because a lot of players are on two, means that they're a lot more restricted in their plays. They have to go for something like Lubellion as opposed to Albion, because they need to put that Fallen Valvaz back in deck, unless they've got like a Brandon Regained or a Branded in white in their hand, because it means that. And I think that comes on to the final sort of just general point I want to make, and it seems like the decks that made it through are the decks that could keep playing on and on. Like we saw a lot of games just go into a game state where it's just like you need that ability to keep bringing stuff back. You need to be able to recur your resources, and you need those one card starters, or just one cards that are extremely powerful. Like that's why stuff like Sprite was Sprite Blue or Sprite Jet or whatever, and and the Fur Hire Runics with Rex Freight for Hire, and of course Cash Tier with like just Cash Tier cards. I mean, there's nothing else to say for Cash Tier apart from that. It's just so it was seemed so important to be able to just keep playing on, and I think that's what like I've taken away from this, and I think it's also helped me a lot in my deck building, where now I'm thinking about um post Cyberstorm Access what I'm going to play, because I'm going to Nats and I'm going to have to figure out what I want to play, and I've had my eye on a new deck where it's just like it answers all the hand traps and everything before you even get to your fifth summon. You can make a borrow load and another negate. I'm not going to say what the other negate is because it'll give away the source. But and then of course you can just go full combo. But it also turn 3 or turn 4. You shouldn't be getting to turn 4. It should be turn 3. You are able to do essentially full combo nearly again with only one or two small differences. Uh, and I think that's what a lot of people need to think about is how do you win the grind game, and like because you've got your answers to like Cash Tira in your going second in your hand traps and everything. You should be able to answer that. Um, or break their board. You should know how to do that. What you really need to think about now probably is how you like manage your resources. Like I'm going to need to do a lot of practice in terms of efficient resource management, because there's a lot of times where I've been testing on like, oh, if I did use that for fusion material instead of that, I would be able to do this now, but I can't, and I have to pass. Of course, this is only my opinion. I'm not the most competitive player. I'm definitely, I mean, heck, I haven't even been to a YCS myself yet. But this is what I'm taking away from this as someone who really wants to grow. That's what I've seen. Of course, I would really appreciate any feedback myself because, yeah, I'm looking to become a better player. And so, if anyone has any sort of thoughts or anything, feel free to leave them in the comments. But aside from that, yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Of course, this is just my opinion. Don't take it for the law. If you're looking for something that really, really no to talk about, of course, you've got the default Jesse and Joshua and all Pack and all those. But like this is just what I'm thinking so far and what I've taken from it. So I hope you enjoy.